this story is about Rand Paul. So let's go to Tom here. Tom, you brought this up, and I'm kind of curious. This is Rand Paul voting against a bill that would curb NSA spying because he doesn't like all of the spying.
Well, no, there are parts of it where he's, and I don't have it in front of me now because you threw it in front of me. But there's parts of this because that he, is legitimately against, and because of his libertarian views. And I don't necessarily have a problem with this. What I have a problem with is like the left wing being all sorts of butthurt. We're keeping the Patriot Act because of Rand Paul. They're doing it out as hit pieces. And yes, this is me defending Rand Paul. The one and only time will ever fucking happen. We all say how we want somebody to be like Elizabeth Warren and keep on her path and on her views. Well, this is Rand Paul actually doing it. And I'm sorry, this bill was shit. It was so watered down. We talk about Obamacare and the ACA. This was like the internet spying bill of Obamacare. You could properly use Ted Cruz's analogy, which was really bad for net neutrality, with actually this particular bill. This so-called...
Just speak of the bill. I'm just going to give you context so people know exactly what we're talking about. This is the USA Freedom Act that Patrick Leahy was proposing, and it got 58 votes on Tuesday night, which is too short. 40 Republicans and 1 Democrat voted against it, and of course Paul also voted against it. So Leahy's bill extended the provisions which were to expire in that Patriot Act in June 2017 as a compromise. So it extended. So as a compromise, in order to change the law to stop the NSA from holding on to phone records. So that was like the goal was get rid of the phone record thing, and then we'll keep trucking with the Patriot Act. He's been against that from day one. So Rand Paul says I'm not going to run against it. So Sean, what are your thoughts on that? And we'll go back to Tom.
Yeah, the way that a lot of liberal outlets are framing this, that Rand Paul's and some libertarians outlets don't get it either. That Rand Paul's a turncoat and he's in favor of NSA spying. Like Dianne Feinstein, Ted Cruz, like a lot of establishment people voted for this this garbage piece of legislation. Basically, what it did, and there's actually a great New York Times article about this, is that it removed the authority in Section 215 for the NSA to hold your phone records, right, which, according to the New York Times, may or may not curtail or eliminate the metadata program. But they can't be sure because they could always say, well, the phone companies have to hold the data, but we could still look through it. Like this law is basically a thing where we say we do something big, but in reality we're just extending the Patriot Act, and that's what Rand Paul didn't want to do. Like Rand Paul wants to fight over the Patriot Act, the reauthorization. I think it's of the entire bill, not of specific provisions, and he didn't want to lose a chance on that fight, so that's why he voted against it. And you could look at all these like super pro-national security, and by pro-national security I mean pro-spying people that voted in favor of it. Like this was not the Amash Amendment that it started out as in the House. This was an extension of the Patriot Act and a symbolic gesture that probably wouldn't have changed much at the NSA.
Yeah, it was a crap shit bill, and that's what people on the left don't understand. And they're like, we had our one chance to curb it, and Rand Paul fucked us in the ass. No, he really didn't. Get the vote on the Patriot Act and make everybody have a up or down vote, and make it an issue. Let's see where Elizabeth Warren really is. Let's see where Chuck E. Cheese Schumer really is, who, by the way, didn't want Elizabeth Warren in leadership role. Let's see where these people really stand with the real vote. And I'm totally supportive of this. This is the one time I'm for this guy, and I cannot stand Rand Paul.
I mean, Rand Paul's obviously, he saw that this was just a simple, careless whisper. And dare I say, he's kind of going through the same strategy that I was talking about, where it's like, I'm not going to sit here and waste my time with this bullshit. I'm in a way where I can actually make a real change rather than just putting through just another watered-down bill that's really not going to do anything. I mean, this whole administration, this whole past 8 years, has been nothing but appeasement, careless whisper, watered-down bills that say what they want to do in name, but doesn't really give any power to anybody to overlook anything or change anything. And I mean, I totally respect Rand Paul for sticking to his guns and saying, no, this is bullshit. You guys are trying to feed me doo-doo caca, and I don't really feel like eating it, so I'm not even going to go for that. And fucking catch on to that. And cause, I don't know, maybe it's because the Democrats are so used to eating doo-doo caca and being told that it's chocolate and they're okay with it, that they just...
That's how you get Ebola.
Yeah, they just get totally... Paul is like, no, I'm not going to let you bullshit me. Let's do this for real if you really want to do it.
Right, and this was not a surprise vote. Like, Rand Paul told everybody way before this, I follow him on Twitter, I'm not voting for this because of this reason. He did interviews, he's like, I'm not voting for this because it extends the Patriot Act. Justin Amash, who proposed this in the House, said he wouldn't vote for the current version of it because it extends the Patriot Act. Like, this was not the House bill to defund the House bill was actually much stronger. It was to defund this program in general, not just as it pertains to Section 215. Like, this was basically a way to, it pushes the Patriot Act off to after the election, which, like, we don't want that. And it basically says, like, oh, we already got rid of the bad part of the Patriot Act. No, there's horrible parts throughout the Patriot Act. And I'm not like, and I'm actually disappointed. I'm not disappointed in Ted Cruz because he's nobody's libertarian. I am disappointed in Mike Lee for voting the wrong way on this. And I'm proud of Rand Paul. He did exactly what he said he was going to do, and he said he would take every opportunity to have a fight over the Patriot Act. And both people in the House do not want to fight over the Patriot Act. They didn't want one when he tried to fight over the certain sections a few years ago. Like, nobody wants to have this fight, especially with somebody who actually believes the Patriot Act shouldn't exist. Like, nobody wants
to run the chance of actually losing that kind of power. I mean, the Congress is very much comfortable with the Patriot Act. They're very much comfortable with the NSA having the power that it has, completely with impunity and nobody watching over them, nobody dictating what they can and can't do, or making a concise rule book on what it is that they're supposed to be obtaining and how they obtain it. I mean, it makes it easier to spy on people. It makes it easy. It ties up a lot of loose ends. So it's like Ron Paul did an amazing thing, and I mean I think this is kind of just a remnant of his father, because his father was very gun ho about things, and when he said he wasn't going to do something, he wasn't going to fucking do it. And I think that's just, that mentality is totally weird and for people right now, because they're so
can I just interrupt here, Haven? I apologize, but I just got to say this. Any liberal, so-called liberal, who is mad at Rand Paul for sticking it to this so-called piece of crap bill isn't a liberal, needs to shut the fuck up, needs to go away, and you're not helping. This is the one.
Right, well, I'm going to push back on that as the piece of shit liberal who doesn't totally agree with the Rand Paul Revolution panel here that we have tonight. So let's deal with a couple of things. One, you all agree that there may not be really that much, when push comes to shove, of a chance of getting rid of the Patriot Act. So this idea that Rand Paul is saving it for it to expire, I'm fairly sure they're going to probably pass it again. So this is cynical politics that I think, like, I don't agree with the left on this, being like, Rand Paul, oh my God, but I also don't think you should give Rand too much credit for this. He won power in the GOP. Mitch McConnell is the guy who wanted this done. He wanted this off the table, and not for like the reasons that the rest of this panel does, but because him and his cohorts are screaming about how ISIS is this will empower ISIS because you won't be able to spy on folks. This is a cynical power move, like every other political move. This aligns him with the power base of the GOP, and that's what helps him when he wants to run next year. So before we get too excited about Rand Paul being a purist, I think that there is a little bit more to the vote for him. There's no downside to voting no on your side of the aisle if you're Rand Paul. At the same time, the folks on his side of the aisle that were against this were not against it because of the Patriot Act. They were against it because they wanted the ability for the government to actually do that.
Then what? Let me push back, Sean, real quick on that. Then what people need to do, if they don't want this and if they want to be involved and think in the box for once, they need to make phone calls starting now and say push for a vote on the Patriot Act and do it. And you better vote no, because if you don't, we're gonna hold your ass to it. And it's gonna burn, and we're gonna burn you.
I'll join your Rand Paul. That's when I'll jump on your Rand Paul bandwagon.
But let me take a chance to agree with Dan. There's a political motivation in there. Rand Paul wants to, in the next go around, to be on the record fighting the Patriot Act. He's not in favor of it. He wants to have a chance to filibuster it. He wants all those chances to give all those speeches and rally up his base and his father's base, which are kind of weary of him. But this was a principled objection, and the fact that Republicans are morons and not everybody knew exactly what this bill did, because again, a lot of the media outlets weren't exactly sure what this bill did specifically. It's what you call it. It still doesn't underscore the fact of why he didn't vote for it and why he explained over and over again. He's like, I'm not going to vote for a full reauthorization of the Patriot Act when it expires and you can fight it. It's not like he's voting this down to prevent authorization of a specific a specific section of the Patriot Act. It's the entire act that he can go at it in the next election. And Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, not Mike Lee, but these guys are probably going to be running against him in the for the presidency. And he's going to want to kick their ass on it in the debate by voting against it in the actual Senate. So there is a political motivation. There also is a principal motivation. And more importantly, it's the right policy, because I don't want a backhanded, like, oh, here you go, now shut up now, and by the way, more years of the Patriot Act. Like, I don't want that.
I mean, because either way, I'm sorry, Haven, go ahead.
Nobody's delusional in thinking that this is completely altruistic. I mean, he is a politician after all, and he does have a base. He does have, Rand groupies that want to see him put his money where his mouth is. And if he has a better shot of doing that, attacking the whole thing, not only does it make him look like David versus Goliath, but it also sheds this negative light on the people he's going to have to run against later. He can point and say, look, I know you guys love Eddie Munster over here, Ted Cruz, but this motherfucker doesn't care that you're getting spied on. This motherfucker doesn't give a shit about the things that you care about, but look at me, I do care. So it's like, it just so happens that this is like the right thing to play on. But, I mean, I'm not surprised that he's going to use that to his advantage. It's good that he is not the only person, aside from a Republican, to want to generate some energy from his base.
Yeah, and by the way, he wants to kick Ted Cruz's ass. Like, Ted Cruz is the fraudulent version of Rand Paul. Rand Paul did a real filibuster against a nomination over drone strikes against Americans. And by the way, he got an answer from the president. The president said he can't kill Americans in the United States with drones. So that is on the record. Ted Cruz did a fraudulent, phony filibuster, publicity stunt filibuster of Obamacare. Rand.
And for the record, Sean, and he kept talking until he had to go on Rush Limbaugh's show. That's when he stopped talking. He literally stopped talking, Ted Cruz, to go on Rush Limbaugh's show. That really should be noted.
And Ted Cruz started, first of all, it was a fake filibuster. They let him take breaks and all that. But he also started at a point in time where he could not have delayed the vote. If Rand Paul doesn't want something to happen, he'll start it at the last second. He'll try his best to delay it. There is principle in that person, and this is a reflection of that principle, not a repudiation of that principle.
And it shows solidarity to his principles. I mean, I think one of the things that I know, at least definitely the conservatives and the liberals, is that they know that their politicians are wishy-washy, and they don't really have too many examples of the people that they're pushing for sticking to what they are saying. So it's going to really appeal to younger voters seeing Rand Paul stick to his guns. It's going to appeal to people outside of his.
So depressing to me.
Well, to me too.
So, as John Oliver said about the Ayn Rand crew, it's something you're supposed to grow out of, like ska or hand jobs, and it's just the idea that these people with their
hand jobs, really? Ayn Rand and hand jobs? You had to go there.
Well, people are saying that's what they want, is somebody to stick to their guns. So instead of hating the
what if he doesn't have guns? His guns are his fingers.
There is places you can give Senator Paul credit to, and then you need to stick him in the eye with your finger. Because,
trust me, Dan, I feel like I'm a little bit more Che Guevara than a lot of people on this panel. So I really don't care for Rand Paul, but he's appealing because
I get it. It's Rob Ford up here.
The thing that I want to see is a champion. You know what I'm saying? That's what liberals want to see, is somebody that's like, fuck you. We want our own personal George Bush, who just doesn't give a fuck. He's gonna do what he wants, say what he wants, and that's how.
That bothers me though, and that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't want a liberal George Bush. I want somebody who respects the law and respects the actual office and does reach across the aisle. I don't want this train wreck up against the wall constantly, because people have to.
We're not there yet for reaching across the aisle. Right.
Yeah, because how many times? Wait, let me push. Dan, can I push back?
The same thing.
Can I push back on the reaching across the aisle? How many times has let's take the immigration issue.
Right.
Let's take the immigration issue with tonight. Obama's given Republicans time to put the Gang of 8 deal that Marco Rubio got trashed over for doing, and he won't bring it to a vote. That's why liberals want somebody like George W. Bush, because for Christ's sake, we're tired of the watered down bullshit like the NSA Freedom Act.
And I don't mean George W. Bush.
Hold
on.
George Bush is not a lion-like leader. Like, the Democrats want a Rand Paul. Just admit it. It's what you want. You want somebody who will filibuster shit that their own party
argue
likes.
that Elizabeth Warren is that. Is this
she does. Well, Elizabeth Warren, go look at her. She'll say that the country is rigged and the Republicans rigged it. Like, Rand Paul will say the Republicans fucked you over on the drug war.
But it's not. But first of all, I don't want to be lied to, because I know it's not just the Republicans who rigged it. It's everybody.
Right.
And also, Elizabeth Warren pretty much refuses to run. So it's like, okay, as far as liberals are concerned, you don't really. When I say we want a George Bush, we want that straight up Texan, I don't give a fuck. This is my agenda, and I'm sticking to it. And we don't have that with the Democratic Party. We have a bunch of people who are gonna say whatever they need to tell you to make you take your panties off, but then do whatever the fuck they want once they're already in there.
But there's a ton of conservatives that'll say the same thing to you about their conservative,
Exactly, but
that would be Ted Cruz.
On both sides, people see that this is leaving a bad taste in their mouth, and that's why Rand Paul is so appealing. Is because somebody has to be the rock, somebody has to be the stable stance. Everybody else is fucking waves coming in and out, doing whatever they want, and it's unfortunate that Rand Paul is the only person who's picked up on the American people saying, we need somebody who's a fucking statue in the things that he believes in.
Haven, it's way more than unfortunate, man. It's fucking depressing that Rand Paul, it makes you almost want to find a bathtub to go do something in. Let's be honest.
Take a shower. But Elizabeth Warren sucks on pot. I just want to bring that up. It's a fact.
Well, that's okay, but on the opposite side, I think that the Rand Paul, Ron Paul revolution gets way too much credit for just being anti-war and pro-pot. That, let's be honest, is a big part of the, we love the Rand Paul stuff.
True, but I think
freedom.
Ron Paul's the only person that has really talked about expanding voter rights. So you have.
I don't agree with that, but okay, sure.
I mean, you have a Democratic Party that's sitting there saying, oh well, you know, whatever happens, if you can't vote, you can't vote. And then you have a Republican Party that's saying, no, you have to do this, this, and this. You have to have this blood sample.
That's not fair. That's not no. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Haven, that's not fair. Haven, that's not fair.
Hold on, one at a time.
Hold on,
Cory Booker,
Attorney General. But Eric Holder was a shitty attorney general, but he actually did try and fight those voter ID cases.
Right.
Cory Booker teamed up with Rand Paul to expand the franchise.
But
Rand Paul is the only national Republican.
He's not trying to expand voter rights. Rand Paul's the only person who legitimately said we have millions of people in prison who cannot vote. It's fair. That's completely
and Cory Booker, the Democrat, is the guy co-sponsoring the bill, though, Haven.
Right.
And Cory Booker is the only Democrat. I hate saying Democrat. Democratic Party member who is willing to go on the limb with Rand Paul to do that, and he needs some credit for that.
Cory Booker Party, it's the Democratic Party. Cory Booker is one person, and the entire other party is not on that boat, and that's
the same with Rand Paul, right?
Yeah. I mean, Rand Paul is the only person that's talking about it. That's why it's appealing. That's why these people are appealing. But Booker is not the Democratic Party. He is not the main. He's not the main voice. He's going to face issues from both sides, and people are going to see that. And people are not going to see, oh, Cory Booker's really going on a limb. They're see, holy shit, these Democratic people who say that they're liberals say are demagogue our rights. That's what they're going to see.
I mean,
that's not.
We know that Cory Booker is really pro-Wall Street, but we also know that Rand Paul is absolutely abysmal on the environment and how any liberal or anyone who leans the least bit left could ever think that Rand Paul is your candidate is beyond me. But if you're a libertarian like Sean, I get the appeal.
And I just want to point out.
I would never support Rand Paul, just for the record. But I will give credit where it's due.
But
I just want to point out one thing. I'm sure you can find more Democrats that are in favor of restoring felon rights. Because I remember something from the campaign, the Republican campaign this go around, that will actually shock you. You know who voted in favor of restoring felon rights? Rick Santorum. If Rick Santorum could be in favor of that at one point in his entire life, then I'm sure there's more Democrats than Cory Booker in the Senate that are.
And of course, we could do a whole show with Jordan French here talking about why these Republicans who are so Christian don't believe in these sort of things. So, I mean, so much for redemption and everything else.
Yeah, right?
They can say, there's a lot of people who say all kinds of shit. They'll say that they'll do all kinds of things. They'll say that they'll walk your mother home and shit. Sure enough. But when it comes time to actually doing it, a lot of people will cut their nose off to spite their face, despite the fact that they know that their constituents want them to really push on it. And, I mean, I am not a Rand Paul supporter. The things that he promotes I don't really agree with all the time, but it is appealing to find somebody that's like, no, I'm going to push my ideals. I'm not going to just say it just because it's sweet to say. I'm going to actually do something about it. And we're not getting a lot of that.
How he climbs the Republican mountain in the next year, though, is going to be super fascinating to me. Because he's a guy that, if they did get some of that thing through, like we've covered this on our show before, if he can get his vision through to that Republican Party, that's a huge political shift. That's not an inch, that's a mile. So good luck to Rand Paul.